Good afternoon. How's everyone doing so far? Good presentations, no pressure. Sorry for repeating, but I'm Mark Wilson, Head of Marketing Technology for Lottoland's group of companies. For those of you who don't know, Lottoland is one of the world's leading iGaming operators. We're in about 15 markets with over 21 million customers and about 450 staff globally. Today, I'm excited to talk to you about our journey. Not too much theory, but a real step-by-step account of our 3-year consolidation project with Optimove, and how we got to reduce the number of campaign setup touchpoints from around 64 to just 8, saving almost 300 hours a month in CRM time, and saving around €1 million a year in costs while doing so. So I'm definitely going to talk about how we got there, but before I do, I think it's important to talk a little bit about where we started. So, where we started. First of all, my role didn't exist. There was no head of marketing technology at Lottoland. We had 3 companies, we had a stack, and we had a problem. And we had an idea of didn't really have much of an idea of what it was. We did know we had a lot of duplication in tools, in terms of functionality, but most importantly in terms of cost. And there's certain things we just weren't using. We had a lot of manual processes. Our teams were spending huge amounts of time in spreadsheets, transferring data from one system to another. We had disconnected data. Systems weren't talking to each other. We had problems sending data to and from our CRM, and the whole thing was a bit of a mess. And as you can imagine, this led to difficulties with reporting, inconsistent data, and just difficulty getting the information you needed. Now, some of you can probably relate to this sort of picture. For us, in reality, it looks something a little bit like this. Logos removed to protect the innocent. Internally, this became affectionately known as the spaghetti diagram. Now, it might seem obvious, but until I started in this role, no one had done this exercise, which was simply to map out what tools we had, what was talking to what, and where the data was flowing. It's not an architectural diagram, it's just an idea of where the landscape was. When we did this, we immediately started to see certain problems and areas for improvement. For example, sending our emails took 3 tools instead of 1. We were using one third party for the sending. We were using our own internal template editor that we'd built to create the templates. And then we were doing the actual targeting and segmentation in Optimove. So to send an email campaign, it basically meant that CRM had to create the template in one tool, copy-paste that HTML into another tool, build the audience in Optimove, link the template, schedule the campaign, and then send it from the other tool. I'm sure you can imagine just even that 4 or 5 step process can lead to a lot of human error, a lot of inconsistencies, and difficulty with reporting. So, a decision was made. 2 decisions, actually. One of those was to consolidate our tech stack around a core CRM provider for the group. We had no less than 4 potential candidates for this. And the second decision, was to fix the gaps in our data. We had to be sending things in more real time to our CRM. We needed to remove the black box of data back so we could close the loop. And we needed to improve the way that our tools in our stack were communicating with each other. So we did some vendor research. We looked at functionality, we looked at cost, and very importantly, we looked at fit. We didn't want to be with some tier 1 vendor that just saw us as another number. We wanted a real partnership, someone that could grow with us and help us achieve our goals. And so, a partnership began. And I should make note, it's not always like this, but I'll explain that a little bit more in a further slide. I should also make a point that Optimove was very, very different back then. There was no real time, or it was the very early days of real time. There was no OptiWeb, no OptiMobile. There was no OptiX, now Personalize. No Snowflake data sharing. And even Gen AI was a bit of a speck on the horizon 3 years ago. This is why we approached this as a marathon, not a sprint. We had a long-term vision, and we had to stick to that. We worked with Optimove to share that vision. And actually, I still remember one of the first meetings we had, which was to walk through the spaghetti diagram together, discuss some of the opportunities and potential things we could do there. And as I said, not all of the functionality existed at that time, but we talked about roadmaps, future plans, and how we could align on those. We set milestones, and that's super important in a project of this size and length. You're not going to be doing daily updates or weekly updates, but you also don't want the thing to be invisible to stakeholders and C-suite while you're working on it. It's so important to set incremental milestones along the way where you can demonstrate value back to the business. And last but not least, working together. Like I said, it's not all smiles and fist bumps. You need to push each other respectfully. You need to be accountable. You need to set ownership. And importantly, speak up when you need something and work towards some shared goals. And if all of this isn't hard enough, the world keeps changing around you. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. The MarTech landscape is forever changing. There's mergers and acquisitions. There is convergence of different tools. Many providers are trying to build a platform and own your full stack. There is new features coming out, new entrants entering the market, and I'm not even going to get started on AI. But the landscape is complicated, to say the least. So how did we go about it? Well, first step was consolidation. We had one of the 3 core businesses in our group on a different CRM platform, so we immediately started onboarding them onto Optimove. So we had a core data set, and all of our main businesses were using the same tool. This was the fundamental starting point. While that was happening, we thought about tackling the email problem. We killed our internal template tool that we'd built, and we went about migrating all of the templates and campaigns from the other third party into Optimail. I'm talking about hundreds of campaigns, and while I was ambitious with this, it did take much longer than I thought, close to 9 months for us, with some help from Optimove. And there were times when it felt like changing the tires while the car was still moving, to be quite honest. But we got there in the end. A couple of $100K a year cost saving from doing that exercise. Once that was done, we moved into our on-site channels. Web pop-ups, push messaging, inbox, those types of things. Features that are today taken care of by OptiMobile and OptiWeb. So we did a similar migration process, which was a bit simpler, brought all of those campaigns into Optimove and removed that other third-party provider. Again, a couple $100K a year cost saving. The last step, which we're still not quite done with yet, is onboarding OptiX, personalized. I'll get it right eventually. And that's something we're using for our games recommendations, our product recommendations, some of our on-site placements and banners. That will again enable us to deprecate some of our previous providers, a few $100K a year cost saving in that exercise. In parallel, we worked on the data stream. Like many of you have probably done already, we really doubled down on real time, and that became a focus for us with our data teams. Sending SDK events to Optimove, installing Optimove's SDK, sending server-side events to Optimove, and really getting that data in real time that we could act on. At the same time, A huge focus for our team was getting the data back from Optimove into our systems. This had been a black box for a long time, and it was something that was a non-negotiable for our data teams. So we embarked on, which I think we were one of the first clients to do this, but we embarked on the Data Lakes project with Optimove, which involved sharing data directly from Snowflake to Snowflake. This was a long road. It took a lot of partnership, a lot of patience, and a bit of joint learning, but we got there. And eventually, 3 years later, we're in a state where we're now receiving data back from Optimove into our platform, and it's allowing our teams to enrich this for management reports on our side. Last but not least was the integrations between tools. One thing we found was that when we removed these third parties and brought the functionality into Optimove's native channels, is that we removed a lot of the data issues that we were having. We unlocked a lot more in terms of personalization and dynamic content. It fixed a lot of our own issues. It also made reporting more easy and saved our CRM team time from logging in and out of different tools to get one job done. The other thing we did, which was an absolute game changer for us, was to integrate our internal bonus system tool directly with Optimove. This allowed us to serve bonuses for our automated and always-on campaigns, which is something that we couldn't do in the past. And this was one of the biggest time savers that we had in terms of CRM hours being used. This actually meant our CRM team flipped their whole process on their head. And they went from downloading customer lists from Optimove and uploading it into our tool to creating the campaigns directly in Optimove and pulling the bonus information into there. As I said, it was an absolute game changer for us. We're still doing some work in this space. Obviously, real-time events keep coming and requests from the business keep coming. And we're currently doing some work with Optimove's Day Zero API to increase the first day visibility and conversion. So, where we are now. As I said at the start, reduction of campaign setup touch points. Well, you probably didn't hear me at the start, so I'll say it again. Reduction of campaign setup touch points from around 64 to just 8, saving almost 300 hours a month in CRM time, and savings of around €1,000,000 a year. And most importantly, happy CRM team. It's not just a commercially driven decision. And our friend, the spaghetti diagram, well, it does still exist, although today it looks a little bit more like this. We have Optimove at our core, which is tightly integrated with our in-house customer data platform, or CDP, on Snowflake, which, as I said, allows us deeper, enriched management reporting. We're using your typical channels like SMS and Optimail, which you would expect. And then you have our on-site channels, our apps and websites, which are based on our in-house platform. And these are being augmented by OptiMobile, OptiWeb, and Personalize, formerly OptiX. We're also doing some stuff with Facebook audiences. So in summary, we've gone from fragmented tech stack to a tightly consolidated core that's enabling us flexibility and scale. We've removed a lot of the expensive double payments for tools and software that we weren't using, which has helped us to greatly lower costs. We've reduced the manual work and made things much more automated. I will say, we're not 100% there yet. There are still spreadsheets, but we're in a much better place than we were when we started. And of course, we've gone from disconnected to closing the loop in our data and improving our reporting for our teams. We still have more to do. This is not the end. And I have to make a very big point about this in that any transformation like this is a journey. It doesn't end. This is a starting point for us, but who's to say what things are going to look like in 3 years, 5 years from now? The advancements in AI that are coming, this is not a set and forget solution that you just do once. It's constantly optimizing, growing, and monitoring it. Just to wrap up, I'd like to share a little bit about some of the lessons we learned. First one, expect it to take longer. Just expect it to take longer. Changes in business priorities, changes in staff, changes in tech, changes in the weather, whatever the reason is, it will probably take longer than you expect. When I first started this project, I ambitiously estimated 12 to 18 months. 3 years later, we're just coming to the end of it. So it will take resilience if you want to get there. I touched on this a little bit before, but measure milestones along the way. Progress can sometimes seem invisible when you're working on something for this long, and it's pretty common for stakeholders and C-suite to get a bit edgy about it. It's super important, as I said, that you demonstrate that incremental value and you set milestones along the way. Filtering noise and commit. Now, the landscape is busy as it is, and I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like when you start doing something like this, all the other vendors suddenly wake up and start trying to pitch you things. Now, I'm not saying don't be flexible and don't be agile, but at a certain point, you need to make a strategic decision and you need to stick with it. We spent, before this, around 4 years spinning our wheels, and really, we got nowhere. So at a certain stage, even though you're not completely confident, you still need to kind of make a decision to move forward and at least aim towards that strategic vision. Otherwise, you'll just drive yourself crazy. And last but definitely not least, the data is non-negotiable. Not only is it important for measuring the metrics and the success that you're trying to achieve, but your data teams should absolutely be a front seat passenger in this journey. They're going to have their own requirements. You're going to need them when you want data and attributes to activate those marketing campaigns that you're doing on the other end. And it's just super critical to keep them close to you during this project. So I'd just like to wrap up. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you got something out of the presentation. One final comment. If your stack looks a bit like spaghetti today, don't lose hope. It's pretty normal, I would say. And it's not a failure. It's just a starting point. Thank you all for listening.